Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining me today. With me today is Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And happy Memorial Day. We're doing a reflection this week of Memorial Day weekend just passed and what Memorial Day means.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's transitioned over time, at least in some people's mind. You know, everyone's like, oh, it's the beginning of summer. In theory, it's the beginning of the beach season for those people that go to the beach. It's a day off of work, per se. But I don't know, it's just something in the last couple of years made me reflect more on that. You know, it's for those that have served and given their life for that. You know, my grandfather was in the Navy, and he never talked about it because he was that older generation where, you know, he said he was in Pearl Harbor, but that was like, that's as much details I think I got out of him my entire time with him. Like, it just wasn't a conversation that they had. They just did it and moved on.
Yeah.
And I know we have some team members that, you know, have served, and it's a thank you to them as well. So I just kind of wanted to go over that a little bit more, just because of the fact that, you know, it was great this week will be a little short, and so people got to do some other things, but sometimes we lose the real meaning of it. Just like all holidays, they kind of transition into what the current media and advertising have made them out to be.
It's tough too, right? Because at least for me, not that I forget what it means, but with the extra day off and planning family gatherings or getting away or whatever it might be, you sort of skip straight to those. Oh, we got another Monday, right? We got a long weekend, or hey, this is the official kickoff of summer, and start thinking about, you know, whether or not you got some family vacations or plans coming up and things of that nature. So you kind of like, I maybe for me at least, unintentionally sort of skip through what we're actually celebrating. So
yeah, and I think Memorial Day specifically, I think that it's become, you know, we've sort of lost track of what it was about, in the sense of war used to be much more like visceral, much more real. I mean, like, you go back to World War I, World War II with trench warfare, like people were dying, even Vietnam, like you saw it. And first, you know, the world has changed, war has changed, and it's fought differently. And, you know, there's drones and there's planes, and it's not us. And, you know, and so, you know, we've moved beyond being involved in the war in the Middle East over all those years, the 20 years that we were there. So you're not as likely for it to be fresh in your mind as something that's happening. So it's more of a memory. And as, you know, for me personally, as my grandfathers and my dad and everybody passed away that were in war, let alone going back, for me, I'd have to go back one more generation. So it was my dad's great uncle. He passed away, I think, in World War I. And that was probably the last person that died in a war. Both of my grandfathers were in World War II in the South Pacific and in Europe, but neither of them died.
mm-hmm.
So you sort of, it's an odd holiday. The girls had asked me about it. They were like, well, Memorial Day, what is it? And I was like, well, it's celebrating veterans, but not veterans. It's if you passed away in a war. And we talked about, you know, like our family had passed away in a war. But you sort of like, all of a sudden, especially with the way we go to the beach, it just becomes, well, Memorial Day, that's the start of summer, you know, which is really odd. It goes from being a celebration or a remembrance, not a celebration, but a remembrance of people who gave their lives so that we can live life the way we do.
Right.
And especially in this environment, you know, in where we are right now, as divisive as everything is. And we're, you know, we forget that a lot of people went to war and risked dying and did die so that we could have the freedom to just do what we want to do, even if what we want to do right now is argue with each other.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it may be, so so I did not serve in the military in any capacity. My dad did not either. My grandfather, my mother's dad did serve. He served in he served for a long time, but in Vietnam and before that. And I think for me, part of it is, one, what you said, right? War doesn't necessarily happen the same way it used to. Now, it's still terrible. It's still bloody. It's still, awful. But I actually am thinking maybe it's the way, like, it's presented too, right? Maybe that's what has desensitized us a little bit to the idea of those who have fought, those who have served, and those who have given their lives for the freedoms that we have. Just because the way it's presented.
Yeah.
You know, the media, when the media gives you like a clip or an example or a report of something that's happened, you get like a polished, clean 30-second version of something happening thousands of miles away.
Yeah, well, and it's you know, what's really weird about it, I think the odd thing is we have, by these people who gave their lives, done a great job of keeping the war away from us, right? Like, in other words, right now there are multiple wars going on, and there's people dying horrifically that in their Memorial Day, whatever that would be, it would be very meaningful. But for us, we've managed to establish a way that we keep it at bay. You know, like there's stuff going on in a lot of different places, and we're involved to some degree, but we don't talk about it, and the news doesn't carry it, and they don't show you anything, and it's all very intentional that they don't, because that lets us live our lives this way as if we're unimpacted.
Right.
Well, that, and also I think that, you know, because, you know, we've all talked, it's either grandparents or great grandparents that I don't have anybody close to me that is providing service.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's just this area, the Mennonite background, if we'll call it, the mostly pacifist, it's that kind of thing. But then the other day when we went to that signing day for BCTC,
Right. Yep.
and to see, like, I don't know, it was almost not quite a third of the students were actually going to go to ROTC or some type of, you know, they were signing up for at least their 4 years. And it was neat to see, but it's just something that if it's not close to you, it just kind of, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
none of our kids or anything like that. We had a kid a couple years ago that worked for us for a summer, and then he went into,
Yep. Yeah.
but if you don't have it, like that visceral connection
Right.
to somebody, it kind of can glaze over a little bit more.
Yeah, and I, you know, I will say, like, with coaching, I've actually had the chance to like coach a number of kids who recently graduated from high school and went into service. You know, went to the Marines or the Army or the Navy or whatever it might be. But I think that even, like, they have all fortunately come home. You know, I've seen them all again since that. And, like, you know, Gavin's got a good friend who is stationed in South Korea right now. But they play like FaceTime video games, right? So Gavin's home for the weekend, and the two of them are like, it's just like he's still the same kid to me, even though he's not at all the same kid.
They're not writing letters that come 3 weeks later and sending them back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and you know, for me personally, my dad was in Vietnam. You know, he did multiple tours in Vietnam, and ironically, eventually he died from cancer from Agent Orange. That's the reality of the situation. And he, like Ford had said, my dad didn't talk about it. I mean, I know a couple little stories that I've said, you know, at different times to people. But it's one of those things that is really ironic to me as that happened, as my dad passed away. And I thought about it, you know, I mean, he died with, you know, no other ailments. His heart was fine. Everything was fine. But that eventually it got him. You know what I mean? It's one of those things war has changed, I think. And that's easy for me to say sitting here on a comfy chair. And I'm not
Right.
inferring that it's easy.
No. Yeah.
But I certainly think that the technology has changed things in how war is fought by the United States.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's
don't
true
know.
of other countries because they don't have the ability to do it the way we're doing it.
Yeah.
But, and I don't mean that in the right scenario, we wouldn't end up in the same boat where there's people going with their boots on the ground to war, but it's not how we're fighting right now. And I think it makes it a little easier, a little more palatable, and makes us able to take it for granted when you get to a holiday like this. And you know, I try not to do that. I am, you know, I don't want to come off as like super nationalistic, but like the reality is I do believe we live in the greatest country in the world, and people can argue with me. They can disagree with me. That's fine. That's because you live here, because you live in this place that I say is the greatest place, in my opinion. You have the right to disagree with me, and I have the right to disagree with you. And that's part of what makes it what it is, you know, and that only occurred because generations of people were willing to go to battle to protect that idea hoping for the best of what we think and allowing for the worst of who we could be.
Well, I think it's something that is interesting, but Gettysburg, which is 2 hours from here.
Mhm.
Now we're going back multiple wars, right? That's a way back one.
Sure.
But you know, we know Gettysburg, we know it's a tourist trap per se, we know all that stuff, but we were out there the other week, and like, it's amazing how like your mind is filled up with so much stuff that, you know, just driving through town, I didn't even do any tours or do any of this stuff, but just like driving through that town and just like thinking of what that town looked like at the point that, you know, it was under siege and things like that. Like, it just connects a little bit closer to you. But I think that because of the data dump that we're all receiving on a daily basis, you know, we just don't have that time to reflect the way that we might have in the past.
Well, you know, a funny thing, Brian, that this is a story from Jersey. So in like the Cherry Hill area, there's a few signs, and there was a line, I don't remember who it is, of British people, British Army in the Revolutionary War. And there's a sign that says it stretched from this one spot to another spot. I mean, it's in 2 counties. You know, like there have been a lot of wars fought and a lot of Americans that died that we're celebrating and remembering and appreciating, that enable us to come to work and to live our lives and play sports and go to the beach and everything else. And so partly it is appropriate that like people view this holiday as a day when you can go, you know, just enjoy time with family and things you like to do, because that's what their sacrifice afforded you. But at the same time, don't lose sight of the fact that you're enjoying it because they provided that sacrifice.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a interesting thing, because that is what the end goal of most of this was. Now, and those people, you know, had to sacrifice their lives for it, but that is the goal. It's just that, you know, you think of like July 4th, there's fireworks, and usually most time you go to a fireworks display, there's red, white, and blue in it or something like that, or, you know, different holidays. It just seems like this one, just because it's like we're always looking forward, trying to get to the next thing, that it's like, oh yeah, snuck past as far as the reason behind it. And then, you know, the other interesting thing is too, like, we have some holidays here in America that when people from outside the country come in, they just don't understand them because they are specific to us.
Right.
You know, Thanksgiving, certain things that, you know, they say, oh, we saw that in the movies, but they didn't really understand what it was because their country doesn't celebrate those. And they have other ones that we don't have, but it's just interesting because like it's so ingrained in us because of how, you know, that's all we're used to. That it's like, what do you mean you don't have Thanksgiving? I thought, you know, and like, hey, that's part of a history story. That's not just a, you know, it's not across the world. Everybody does the same things.
Right.
No, and you sort of build your calendar to it, right? Like, in other words, like, you know, I mean, Memorial Day is going to be the beginning of summer and Labor Day is going to be the end. You know, Labor Day, you go back to school, you know, like you build all these things, you know. I always think now, I'm not a hunter, but I always think now Thanksgiving always reminds me that I got to be aware that a lot of guys are going to want to take off right after that because of all the hunting seasons that open up. You know, like you start to build these schedules of what your life runs on based on holidays, but you at times forget, you know, or don't give enough credence to what it is that they did and what it meant. You know, so it's.
Yeah, I think we hope that you got to enjoy the time with whatever you want to do, because that is the reason that, you know, this holiday's here, but we just always want to kind of make sure we reflect a little bit too at the same time, just because it is so important of how we got to do and choose to do the things we did for this last weekend.
Yeah, reflect and say thank you, right? I mean, it's one of those things, if it's not in your face, you kind of forget to say thank you and remember what actually happened, why the holiday actually exists.
Yeah, why you have off.
Yeah. This is our thank you from this room for now.
From the three of us, for whatever it's worth. Thank you. Yeah. That's probably a good place to wrap it up. And like we said, we hope you had the chance to enjoy that freedom and that day off. And we hope you come back for another episode sometime. Thanks.